Howdy once again everyone. Over in Japan, Tokina are continuing to churn out a sporadic flow of new manual focus lenses for mirrorless cameras. Here is their latest offering, the Tokina SZ 33mm f1.2e. It's a totally manual focus lens for Sony's E-mount and Fuji's X-mount cameras, which offers an aps-c sized image circle. Here's what you get when it's mounted onto a full-frame camera, by the way. It's actually fairly good full-frame coverage you're getting there, but still, you'll definitely want to shoot in crop mode. Its focal length is the full-frame equivalent of about 50mm, so that's a nice standard field of view, neither wide-angle nor telephoto, and that bright maximum aperture of f1.2 is extremely fast, useful for shooting indoors or in darker situations, and particularly useful for getting out of focus backgrounds in your images. The lens's price is $400 US. I'd like to thank Tokina for sending me a copy of this lens for testing, although as usual this is a fully independent review. Let's take a look at its build quality first. Being made of metal, the lens feels like a real rock. You could probably use it to hammer roofing tiles, although I imagine Tokina probably wouldn't recommend doing that. It weighs 605 grams, pretty heavy. There's no weather sealing gasket around the darkly metallic focus mount here. The first control point is the aperture ring. It's made of metal and turns very smoothly and a little heavily with uneven spacing between the f-stops. Next comes the focus ring. It turns just as smoothly and heavily, and I'm pleased to report it has plenty of precision for focusing at bright apertures. The lens displays some focus breathing, zooming in a little as you focus more closely, but it's a bit less than average for a lens of this kind. The lens comes with a slightly narrow but metallic screw-on lens hood, and its filter size is 62mm wide. Overall, this is one of the most simple and solid feeling lenses I've ever laid hands upon, even down to the heavily turning control rings. It might not have autofocus or any other electronics, but this thing will still be around long after the apes take over the planet. Alright, let's look at image quality. I'll be testing it out today on my little Sony a5100 with its 24MP aps-c sized sensor. No in-camera corrections are available with this lens. Straight from f1.2, we're seeing very good sharpness here, average contrast, and just a tiny hint of colour fringing. Great start though. Let's look in the corners. Ouch, they are not so good, they are really soft. Although actually, after years of experience studying test charts, I could see that this is not corner softness, but actually the corners are out of focus. Or at least I suspected as much and did some deeper testing. The lens is suffering here from major field curvature. The corners are sharp at a different focus point to the middle, so if we refocus the lens to look at the corners, we now see that they're a bit sharper. Stop down to f2 and those corners now look very sharp, but back in the middle, we're still out of focus. Refocus to the middle and image quality looks fantastically sharp again. So, from f2, this lens has excellent image quality, but only depending on where it's focused. If you want even sharpness across the entire image frame, all at the same time, then you have to stop down to f8, which thankfully is just before the point where the image begins to soften due to diffraction. Here is f11 and f16, where softness has crept in much more. Well, it's a little while since I've tested a lens with such strong field curvature. Occasionally, people try to argue with me that it can be a good thing because it could cause your background to be even more out of focus than it would otherwise be, and so on. I don't buy that. Really, you want to see a nice, predictable, flat field of focus with, well, just about any lens really. However, it's not a problem for subject and portrait photography, where, even at the brightest aperture of f1.2, some very good sharpness is possible. Let's take a look at this lens's distortion and vignetting. It's a good performance here, a fairly low level of barrel distortion, and surprisingly low vignetting too. Stop down to f2, and any kind of darkness that was in the corners is gone. This lens can focus down to 50cm, which is quite a bit further than average for a standard lens. What's more, when shooting close up, image quality takes a huge hit. Stop down just to f2 and the contrast is far better, and at f2.8, image quality is excellent again. Let's see how well the lens works against bright light. It's a poor performance here, with plenty of flaring and glaring, which will cause all kinds of trouble in your images. And while we're working in the dark, let's take a look at chroma smearing. At f1.2, bright points of light see all kinds of smearing issues here, not good. However, the good news is that you only need to stop down to f2 and right away, image quality is a million times better. Let's zoom out and take a look for sun stars now. You need to stop down to f11 to see anything interesting here, and they're not especially impressive when you do. Next, bokeh. This lens's backgrounds are on the smooth side of average. They can occasionally look a little jumbled, but actually they are mostly pretty smooth. And related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.2, the close-up image quality is so poor that really it's quite hard to see anything at all here. Let's stop down to f2. A touch of colour fringing is visible on bokeh highlights here, but nothing serious, and at f2.8 it's gone. Overall, this is a camera lens with some genuinely nice potential, but also a number of issues. The field curvature is something you'll have to think about quite carefully, although it doesn't get in the way of subject photography. Other issues like chroma smearing and a poor reaction to bright light will cause problems when shooting at night time. On the other hand though, it's a lens that is sharper than average, and its vignetting and distortion are impressively low, so it swings and roundabouts really. I'm not sure if the lens is quite worth $400, especially as it's a manual focus optic, but for subject photography, where the field curvature won't get in the way, it'll actually work very well for you. I want to take a minute to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who are making a big difference to keeping this channel going. I enjoy making these reviews, but they take quite a bit of work, as you can imagine. I like making all kinds of exclusive bonus content for supporters over there, so check it out in the description below. See you next time.